Duty.
All right. Happy Wednesday. It's that time of the week again. Wednesday, 2:30 p.m. Mountain Standard Time, 4:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, and just so that they're not forgotten, 3:30 p.m. Central and 1:30 p.m. Pacific. And if you're in Alaska, hope you're having a good lunch while you're hanging out and watching us.
Do the math
My
yourself,
name,
though.
do the math yourself. I think that they're 1 hour behind Pacific time. I seem to remember that from the time I lived there. You really feel like the news has happened, like
Mhm.
already happened, and you're just like catching up like within 5 minutes of waking up in Alaska. It's a lot of just like scrambling. I lived up there during the 2008 presidential election and financial collapse
Oh, wow.
of the world markets. And I remember just being like, I shouldn't get on my plane to go back to the lower 48. Like everything seems to be okay up here. It's a little cold, but being
I've never
behind the
been.
times is good.
I want to go.
It's amazing. It's
Mhm.
totally untapped, and it's it feels like America, but in the same way, just wait for this. In the same way that going to European cities like Amsterdam feels like the West, but it feels different. Alaska is that too, living out west here in America.
Yeah, well,
Did you like
Fish
that
has
segue?
actually been to
I like that
Amsterdam,
connection.
unlike Alaska. So,
Fish has been to Amsterdam. They sing about Alaska a bit, but they've been to Amsterdam 3 different times. And we today on the Helping Friendly podcast live are going to talk about one of those appearances because it's about to celebrate its 25th anniversary.
That
I'm
is
really excited
crazy.
this is more
That
math.
makes
I
me
don't
feel
do math.
really, really old.
I've done time zones and I've done math, and I can tell you a little bit of the history of the Netherlands if you'd like, but I don't think that's what we're here for.
Oh, thank you.
Please no.
I dropped out of
it's a
school for a reason, man.
it's a fascinating history. You're talking maritime battles, you're talking liberalization, you're talking tulips,
Bicycles.
talking incredible art. It's an amazing place.
You're talking
But
weed?
you're talking weed. I mean,
What's that?
that's generally the liberalization of the world. But my name is Brian Brinkman. I'm here with my friends Megan and Jonathan. How are you both doing here today on this fine Wednesday afternoon, wherever you find yourselves in the time zones that I listed off?
Well, time is an illusion, so I'll just say I'm fine.
You
I'm
fine?
doing great too.
Good, good, good. What's happening for you guys this week? What's happening right now? What's kind of the big thing on tap for you both this week?
I'm going to see Courtney Barnett tonight with my daughter, my 18-year-old daughter, the middle
Awesome.
child, and this will be her
Nice.
first time at the 9:30 Club,
Oh
and
wow.
it's gonna be cool. Masked and vaxxed and all the regulations are in place, so I'm trying to like trust that it will go as well as it did when I was there in November, whenever it was for Dinosaur Jr. And I'm really excited. I haven't seen Courtney Barnett. I know she's great live. I have it on good authority from good friends, and Piper's a big fan, and so it's going to be fun. I'm a big fan
Awesome.
too, but it's nice that she is.
I loved her last record. Absolutely loved it.
Hmm.
And I've got to imagine her live. It's pretty impressive that she's able to do a tour right now. Is she still living in Australia or is she stateside at this point in
I don't.
time?
I
I don't know
honestly
either.
couldn't say, but yeah, here we are.
I'm glad that that is a tour that is happening in the early part of 2022. That is a very good sign. I've been doing the texting with my show going buddy out here. We have a lot of concerts coming up in the next 6 weeks, and it feels really good to have that happening on the horizon once again and feel good about it.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's kind of where I am too. I'm like booking all the shows for the spring. It feels great. I'm going to go see Waxahachie next week here in New York at the Beacon Steel.
Nice.
Yes, I love Waxahachie. My husband's a huge fan. I saw her this summer at Mass Mocha outside. Just awesome. She was with Kevin Morby, and I'm going to see her next week. And I love her, and I love Brooklyn Steel. It's such a fun venue. And yeah, I'm just starting to book all the shows for like everything that's coming in like May and April. I'm getting super excited. It's going to be a busy spring. And I'm just waiting on those Fish summer tour dates, but I'm trying to be patient. It's not working.
Yeah, I'm about to book some April stuff myself, and very excited for shows.
I think they've got to be coming in the next week or so. We'll probably be talking about this, I'm guessing, by the next time that we all hang out.
Oh, that'd be awesome.
I'm not reporting anything. Don't aggregate me, please. But I just have a feeling that when you start to get the Dave Matthews tour dates released,
Yes.
there is a connection there behind the
Mhm.
scenes. If you weren't aware, and one comes out, they kind of test the market, and then the other one comes out. And I'm curious to see what they do this year because I'm taking a family vacation at the end of June into early July, and the rumored dates I saw were going to be in June to July, kind of like a mirror of what we saw in 2019. And
Mhm.
I'm going to be in a remote part of North Carolina. It's going to be absolutely beautiful, but I'm going to have to webcast some shows, and so I'm trying to figure out the family logistics of that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, Murphy's Law being what it is, I find that with the Broke Down Pod, as soon as I release an episode, then they release or announce the new box set or the Dave's Picks.
Yeah.
It always
Yeah.
comes immediately after I release an episode. So, pretty sure they will come right on our heels with the tour dates on a Thursday or something. So everybody will have time to soak them in, figure out how disappointed they are, excited they are, all of the above, because there's always some of both when you poll the community, and then we can talk
Mhm.
about it like 5 days later when it feels like old news, but it'll still be fresh and exciting for us.
I guess the most newsworthy thing that's happening in the fish world right now is Trey Anastasio has started music lessons on Instagram,
It's good that he's finally
which
taking some, don't you think?
it
I
is.
mean, if he wants to take this music thing seriously,
I just love his like quiet, hushed morning voice. He's like, "Hello,
yeah.
everybody. It's 7 a.m."
It's one of the interesting things about Trey that I never really considered until the last couple of years. He gave an interview. This must have been sometime in the mid 2010s, where he talked about living in kind of a remote part of Vermont during the 1990s, and how he and his wife would always have consistently NPR on at like a hush, like so, like it was just that background chatter. And I was like, man, that just like what's like the Danish idea, like higgy or huggy. Do you know what I'm talking about?
Mhm.
Like the sense of like comfort, you know?
Pig. Yeah.
You know what I mean? I'm totally butchering the term, but like it felt like that vibe of like you just have distant radio on in the background. And so I started doing that. And now I watch like Trey at like 7 o'clock in the morning with like a fire. And I'm like, man, I need to move into a house where I have a fireplace because like having a fire in the morning just seems so like the dude just for everything that you think about him standing on stage playing at a ridiculous volume like a Harry Hood peaking jam, you then see him in these like very quiet, peaceful moments. You're like, oh man, that guy gets it. He gets the vibe outside of the concert. It's pretty amazing. But I've been enjoying it. They're really I don't know. They're really insightful and they're really kind of humbling in a sense to have someone who plays music on that level talk to you at this kind of pace. It's great.
I'm a little behind. I've only watched the first one. I've been kind of preoccupied working on some other things, my own music and stuff, and I'm kind of hoping to sit down and catch up with them in the next couple of days.
They're fun. It's a good 20 minutes.
Yeah.
It's solid stuff.
Well, that's part of it. Is that like if it were a 2-minute video, I'd have watched it, but I want to commit that moment to hearing and
Yeah.
and ingesting. I really enjoyed the first one. It was great advice. It was very important. I remember my band teacher was when I was in middle school and actually 6th grade. I started with him, and he was very into rhythm. And even though none of us, I think, or very few of us, were going to go on and do high school marching band, he had us in middle school marching because he said this is an important method in which you can think about rhythm and the movement and so yeah, I mean he was all about teaching even us woodwind people, good rhythm, and it's cool to see that. I've heard him talk about his drum teacher not letting him use drums and stuff in the past, and it's cool to hear him talk about breaking down rhythms and things like that.
Yeah, yeah. Hearing the foundations of it it's one of those things that makes this whole experience an endless rabbit hole because it makes you just like return to what he's thinking about and what he's when he's up on stage playing. But yeah, we should definitely continue to provide updates on those Instagram lessons because they are a ton of fun. I have one final question for y'all before we jump into our first ad read and then jump into the actual topic of the show, which is 2/17/1997, a fantastic concert from Amsterdam in the Netherlands, a country that I cannot say enough good things about. But if you want me to continue rambling on, I will. I'm happy to. But
hey man, I got a concert to get to, so let's go.
You do.
Yeah.
You do. Really quick question, just like as simple of an answer as you can. Do you think that Phish will ever be inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame? And sub question, do you think it matters, Jonathan?
I don't know, and I don't think it matters.
Meg?
Yes, they will. And yes, it matters because they are one of the best American rock bands ever. And if they're not, it's just completely criminal and absolutely short-sighted.
Don't worry, the Rock Hall is nothing if not criminal and short-sighted.
Totally. Like you can't, I mean, don't they have the hot dog hanging in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame right now?
Yep.
I mean, it doesn't make any sense to me. Anyway, yes, they will be. And it's well overdue.
I think that they will. And I think it's going to happen when we all get to a point where like, I don't even care anymore.
Yeah.
Like,
I'm already there, so maybe next.
Why are we?
Well,
you're there. I'm talking about the general public. I don't know. I'm looking at the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame the same way I look at the Baseball Hall of Fame, where I'm just like, if you're not going to let these guys in, and not like offer an explanation, like it's not a Hall of Fame. So, it's just another year where we are the most overlooked fan base, even though we are
weird.
Consistently funding one of the top touring acts in all of live music. So you are welcome, all you industry execs out there who just can bank on 35 to 40 sold out concerts a year from Phish. Let's jump into the main topic of the episode. But before we do that, there's one more thing we have to do. We want to shout out our friends at Sunset Lake CBD. Sunset Lake CBD is a farmer-owned business which ships CBD products directly from their farm to your door, all of your doors, mine, yours, anyone out there watching. For years, Sunset Lake was a Vermont dairy farm producing milk for Ben & Jerry's ice cream. In 2018, they diversified and started growing hemp for CBD with a product for everyone. They offer pre-rolls, hemp cigars, hemp flowers, as well as tinctures, gummies, and CBD coffee crafted to help with stress, aches, and pains. All those things can be solved in this sense. It's amazing. Sunset Lake CBD saves you money by shipping high-quality CBD products directly from their farm. I will remind you again, to your door. Visit sunsetlakecbd.com and use promo code HFPod for 20% off your purchase. Once again, that's sunsetlakecbd.com, promo code HFPod. I love Sunset Lake. I will just once again advocate for their pre-rolls. They are amazing. They do everything that you need with all the craziness going on upstairs. But sometimes I like the crazy. I like the head high of THC, but sometimes I just want the buzz and feeling good. Speaking of the buzz, speaking of feeling good, let's talk Amsterdam. We are going to be celebrating throughout the year 2022 the 25th anniversary of the year 1997. We'll be doing a bunch of special episodes throughout this year. And this is our first one.
So old right now. Sorry. It's feeling really old when you say that.
Okay,
every
Jonathan.
Time.
I'm right with you. It's okay.
I know, but
we've never looked better.
But I look it, so
it's weird, man. Like, I was not of Phish going age in 1997, but like I can distinctly remember 1997. And it's very strange for me to have that experience. Like, to really think back on like who I know who I have albums that I bought in 1997. You know what I mean? Like, it was a big year for me in terms of discovering alternative rock radio, starting to buy albums that weren't being promoted to me on MTV, starting to really rebel against my parents, but I was still just like a
Oh,
young,
that's so
it was
cute.
weird. It was adorable.
No, baby Brian.
But let's talk about a band that was rebelling against who they had been for the previous 14 years of their career. Fish in 1997. We're going to dive into big picture stuff here in the second segment of the show, but let's break this show down. So this is the third night of the, I believe the third night of the winter tour, the winter European tour. They had wrapped up their New Year's Eve run in Boston, Massachusetts, 5, 6 weeks, 7 weeks earlier. Who's counting? I knew some math at the start of this episode. And they open up this show with the debut of Soul Shakedown Party. What are you guys' thoughts, kind of just generally about this first set and this opener, Soul Shakedown Party?
This opener is such a vibe. I mean,
Yeah.
to me, it's like, we're here, we're chill, we're gonna like ease into this party. It's just a total vibe. It's also like a statement. Like, we're gonna have a soul shakedown party tonight. Like, to me, anytime they open with that, I'm like, it's on. Like, they're ready to play, they're feeling good. I love it as an opener. Because then they go into Divided Sky, which is like, okay, we're here to play some good fucking music tonight. You know, they sound like so tight in this Divided Sky. And that quiet part is just like so incredible in the bar because it becomes completely silent. And you can tell somehow that they're in a really small room. It's just like so cool. And then you hear some people yell and Trey does the one note and then everybody gets completely silent again. It's just like people are listening really, really well, but it's a different kind of listening than people do in the States. You know, they're coming off this, like their first full arena tour in the fall. And so I think this is a chance for them to actually breathe and play a different way. I love it. I mean, they sound like 1996 in the beginning, like a really, really good 1996 show. I feel like that's what the first set sounds like. But they sound hungry. I think like Wilson's awesome. Trey's like really tearing it up, shredding, really strong through Coyote, Timber, Billy Breeze is just beautiful. And then the set ends with like this really well played and fun Llama, Jin, and Golgi. I mean, I think this is a great set. It's super fun.
These guys are on fire at the gates, right? So
Yeah.
what'd you say, Brian? Third show? I think that's right.
I think it's
I believe
the
it's the
fourth,
third show.
maybe.
Fourth?
Is it the fourth? I think it's
I
the
don't know.
fourth. I don't know.
Math is for employees.
first week.
The point is though is that they, you figure they probably took a couple weeks after New Year's, little vacation, little time off, family, what have you. It's 97. Most of them didn't really have families yet, but then they get back together, they start rehearsing because this is back when they rehearsed. Then they fly to Europe and play a couple shows. They're not bad shows, but we're not here to talk about those. And then they come to Amsterdam, where the year before, and Meg, correct me if I'm wrong, I think you were there.
I was there.
They played
crazy.
I want you to talk about that for a second before I pick up on this set, because I think it's important. I know we have context and stuff later, but it's important right here because I feel like the opener is an acknowledgement of where they are, but the rest of the set is more of a statement about this isn't last time, y'all.
Exactly. This is a redemption show. I think
Yes.
that like the first time they played Amsterdam, they were like those 16-year-old boys or 18-year-old who go to Amsterdam and they're like, we're in Amsterdam. And they just like go crazy. Probably exactly what I was doing. I was 19. All day just like smoking, like partying. And then they played a three-set show. And the whole second set, unfinished songs. Like not one song is finished in that whole second set. I did not know it at the time. I had no idea. I have journal notes where I'm like, this is such an awesome show. Like, look at this set list. Like, I was like writing it down, listening to the tape the next day. And I was like, this is unbelievable. But like, I didn't know because I was just like they were. But it was just, that place was sloppy. Everybody in it was sloppy. The band was sloppy. Fishman was like sitting on the edge of the stage during set breaks, smoking. It was a real party throwdown vibe. It was not at all. I also think they were really in 1996 at that time, feeling the pressures of who they were becoming. I think the Dead scene had come on. They were leading into their, Clifford Ball. And then they had like their first big full arena tour in 96, where there was like, concerns about whether they could fill those arenas or not. So I think that 1996 tour was just like an absolute, let's just like blow off some steam, have some fun, party, play some music, hang with fans. So I think that this time they came back like, we're 1997 Fish now. Like we're actually like on top, and we're tight. Like I think they came back with some redemption in mind for sure.
They really did, and they deliver.
Yeah.
Everything you mentioned, the highlights in this first set. The Coyote, by the way, rips.
Yeah.
It rips. Llama's Fire. There's a nice little jam in Bathtub Gin that kind of hints at what we would hear later in the year. Doesn't quite get there. It's not, top tier, but it's pretty great.
The Gin is like, as I was listening to it, I heard bits of like the distortion from 94 and 95, where Trey is kind of playing in this cacophonous style. But then what changes it, Fishman has this disco beat that you've never really heard in Fish before. And even like if you go back to the 12/31/96 show, in the third set, they play Down with the Z's, and you can hear for like one of the first times Trey is just like living by the wah. And for like a 4-minute period of that Down with the Z's, it sounds like 1997 kind of ripping itself out of the body of 1996-ish. But the thing it's missing is Fishman on that disco beat, which is that thing that brings it all together as they move through the rest of this winter tour, the Hamburg show that is so famous that came out on Slip Stitch and Pass, the summer Europe tour, the summer tour, and then like the cherry on top, which is that fall 97 tour, which we'll get to in 10 or 11 months. And I cannot wait to talk about it again because it's just glorious. But, it's interesting when you talk about, there's basically 7 months between their last show in Amsterdam and here. And I think about the first time I went to Amsterdam, I was living in Utrecht in the Netherlands for like 4 months, and we went up to Amsterdam our first weekend because, of course, we're in college. You have to go up to Amsterdam.
Yep.
And I had the exact stereotypical experience that everybody has in Amsterdam. Even though you can do everything in Amsterdam, in Utrecht, and in other cities around the Netherlands, we like went 150 in Amsterdam.
You like freaked out in the Van Gogh Museum. You like did all those things.
So hold that, because Van Gogh is important, because I didn't go to the Van Gogh Museum until like my third or fourth visit. And when I went there and I realized Van Gogh didn't become famous until he was like in his 40s. And like or he might even have been later in life. Like he was a struggling artist who didn't become famous until later in life. And I realized like, there's a long game to be played here. And the beauty of Amsterdam is not cashing in on night one. It's letting like the vibe of the city live with you. And it's the journey is the destination type of thing. And I hear in that 7/12/96 show, Fish being, like you said, an 18-year-old in Amsterdam. It's like, I can buy pot.
Exactly.
And then just like going crazy. And you hear here, and it's so interesting that Soul Shakedown Party is the song that introduces us, because that, like Makasupa, which will blossom later in the year, the 11/19/97 version, oh my God. These are reggae hints that like, they're spacious, they're open, they're laid back, they're kind of goofy in some sense, because why is Fish playing Soul Shakedown Party? Let's not ask, let's not get into that. It's just like the groove is there. And these are the songs that help to point the way forward. Funk and reggae. It's so interesting that is what would ultimately help Fish transition forward.
The key word is the groove.
Yeah.
The groove.
And also, I think, though, that they know that, and this is one of the key differences between this show and the 1996 show, is that they know that this is a party, but they're here to play. Everybody else is partying. So they're initiating the party for everybody, and then they perform.
Yeah.
And, can we jump to set 2? Is it too fast?
Well, I want to say one last thing.
Say what?
One
Just
last thing.
Only one.
Billy Breathes, man.
Oh,
yeah.
It's so beautiful.
Oh my God. Like, it's patient, it's spacious, it's like got this life bubbling from it, but it's also like this dark ballad. It's got all the it's just, what a gorgeous song, and one of the best performances of maybe the best performance of Billy Breathes I've ever heard.
It's pretty nice.
It's pretty nice.
Yeah, I love this version. I love also thinking about it. Like, I was hearing it so much in like fall 95 when I was going to shows, and it was so different because it was brand new, and hearing it in like a version like this where it's really like matured is awesome.
Yeah, there's a
Yeah, it's a
couple
great take.
songs that fall right into that in this in the second set, right?
Let's do the second set then, because
So
this is like a
Wow.
fully fluid, fully flowing second set.
the set's kind of a big deal. Like
Kind of.
I wanna say I love Coil as an opener because you get everything you get from Coil. It's a nice version. It's one of my favorite songs. And great meltdown from Page on the piano. But then the band comes back in and kind of flows us into Down with Disease. That's awesome. That just sounds so good. And then we have this fire Down with Disease. Now, I'll let you guys talk at length about it, but I want to highlight one piece of this Down with Disease, which is the about 13 to 14 minutes mark. They're all but playing Undermined. The groove in that is straight up Undermined. It's just, I mean, they're not exactly, it's not it's not the song. The song's not written yet, but they're playing a groove that is super close to that, which is very cool, very unusual. Then, but the whole jam is outstanding. Again, I'll let you guys talk on some of those details, and then they go into Carini. It's the first Carini, right?
Yes, the debut.
Weird, slow, relative to what we might think of these days, and then it's mostly a jam, and then again, right around the 13-minute mark. I texted y'all today as I was listening to it again today, and the most like intense jamming, so just like I was jumping up and down. I was in a good mood already, and then I'm listening to this. I got it blasting in my kitchen. I'm like, it's raging and just loving this music. So good. And then the beautiful taste. This taste is outstanding. Like this is the 95 song, right? That is now come around. It's changed a lot in 95, and now it's settled in, and this version is terrific. And there is a bit at the end. There's probably about 8 to 10 seconds at the end. Like if you're listening to the Live Fish version or the official physical thing, God help you. There's about 8 to 10 seconds where Trey is playing both Taste and Down with Disease, like back and forth between bars before the rest of the band joins him on Down with Disease. That's super cool, but everything precedes it is great. Quick little Disease, kind of reprise closer. Awesome that they come back and land it. That makes up for all the unfinished, right? The year before.
Yeah, they're like,
right, there you go.
Look what we're doing now.
Susie Greenberg, pumped.
Rocking version.
And then a gorgeous Caspian to outro the set. I think were we just talking about Caspian's closing sets a couple weeks ago?
We were.
Just gorgeous. Perfect example of how this can work.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a great set closer here, and it's this set. So I listened to this show. I texted you guys about this. I listened to the show with the mindset of listening to Fish 1996 playing this. And part of it was like, I've always heard this show is kind of the first, it's not the first, but the first 1997 show. And then I was thinking to myself, like, well, just 2 months earlier, they're playing fall 1996. Like, you don't just like change the year and suddenly become a new person. And this goal that the band had was something that was going to take time. It was going to take effort. It was going to take work. And so I'm listening to this show. And one thing that blew me away was like the first 10 minutes of the Down with Disease sound like a 1996 Down with Disease. It's just shredding. And it's just like Trey high energy. And it's around that 13-minute mark that he starts to slow down. Page comes in with some noise. He really focuses on the clav. Mike at some point plays an effect that like I don't think anyone had ever heard on his bass before. It might be the envelope filter. I don't know what it is, but like it's weird and alien-esque. I was thinking to myself, it sounded like, because I was sitting there like, they've never played this kind of music in front of an audience before. And this is the kind of music that throughout fall 96, they kept saying to each other, and you can read about it in the Fish book. They kept saying to each other, like, we have to be patient. Trey can't be the person who's leading every single jam. This has to be more democratic. And I was thinking, this sounds like the Clifford Ball sound check. And this is all music that they have played before. They just haven't played in front of a paying audience. And how exhilarating it must have been to have that first moment where they fall into this kind of a jam and the audience is totally captivated and they keep playing off of each other and they build into this Carini, which then again does the exact same thing. It builds into this peak, and then the last half of that jam, it's so quiet. It starts to resemble 1998, and it's just spacious, and it's what we were talking about in set one with like Soul Shakedown and Makasupa. It's the lessons of reggae. It's the lessons of funk. It's the lessons of experimentation that just pay off in real time, and it's so exciting to hear it.
I'd really love to know what kind of records Trey and the band at large are listening to around this time.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know if that's information that is attainable.
I know. I was actually reading the Fish book last night again to kind of remind myself of what they were thinking of then. And they were definitely making a conscious effort to change how they were jamming. And I was wondering that too, like, what are they listening to? Like, they're obviously taking more risks and it's like when you've been doing something for so long and it's worked really well, it's really hard to like stop doing that and try something new, especially in front of people. So it's clear why they went to Europe, right? They've got smaller rooms, they have fans over there, but it's a much lower stakes. And so they can actually try things out and take risks. And I feel like this whole second set, you can hear them doing that. Like this Carini is just, it's totally gets super weird. And you can hear them at one point, they're like moaning and singing over it. It's like super driving and intense. And then there's those like trippy sound like I texted you over the weekend. It sounds like a flock of demented space birds are like attacking, and it's just like repeating over and over again. And then
that
Trey
song came the next year, didn't it?
Yeah, exactly. Then Trey starts playing this like lick over and over again. And then Fishman comes in with the drums, this beat, and then it starts to get all funky and it's just so good. And then it fades out and it turns into this like really pretty, beautiful piano. It's like trilling on the drums. It's just this jam like goes everywhere. To me, it's not the most like continuous or like connected big picture jam, but it's super interesting and cool to think about it in the context of where they were at this time. I really think I listened to this twice in the last 2 days. It's really interesting. It's really worth a listen.
It's interesting to me because like 97 and this part of 97 reminds me in a lot of cases of summer 95, where stylistically it's very different, but they're almost saying we're going to entertain you, paying customer, but we're also up here like trying to get to an artistic breakthrough. And so if you don't necessarily like the music that we play for the next 10 minutes, like you're going to have to be patient. We'll play this song that you want to hear in, once we finish this jam, but we've got to see if this is actually doable for us. And if you think about 95, by the time you get, like personally, summer 95 is my favorite Fish tour ever, but I know for a lot of people that sound is abrasive and it's really challenging. When you get to December, it's this like condensed version of what they were playing in the summer, and it's more accessible, it's more melodic, it's more fun in some cases. And I think about this music, to your point, Meg, it's not the most continuous jam, and we would get jams that like were more fluid by the summer, by the fall, but it's them just saying we have to kind of work through this right now in this moment. And if we lose some of the listeners, we think that we're going to actually gain more ears by getting through what we need to get through, which I think they ultimately would.
Yeah, I think it's a great call to suggest the segmented jams, the experimentation, connect to 95 in structurally, although not necessarily musically or tonally. And I think Meg, you mentioned the going to Europe as an opportunity to explore. I think they were taking advantage of the let's see, the old fashioned record label ways. You know, Elektra saw
Mm-hmm.
an opportunity to capitalize on the market there and sent them over. So they were like, hell yeah, let's go. I think that's how that went back then, and certainly in the '90s, it used to be like that for touring acts on major labels, going back well into the '70s. And so they were smart to take advantage of it, and they really took full advantage of it. And so
Mm-hmm.
by the time they went back again. So by the time they really started doing dates, summer '97, they were a very different band. And I think we can. The band has said that the Hamburg show, the Slip Stitch and Pass show, is the point at which they become the band that they are going to be for 1997. But the door is opening right here, and they
Mm-hmm.
are getting ready to walk through. What a great fucking show.
I
I
think
also
that
think
whenever they're taking, oh, sorry, Brian, whenever they're taking risks like that, the songs that come before and after are always better too, because they feel free. They're listening to each other. They feel open, connected, creatively fulfilled. I think that it always makes the show better whenever they're taking risks.
Yeah, well, they're not going to take those risks unless they're in that good place, right? So
Yeah.
the
right.
song that comes before, that's when they realize, okay, this is feeling good. All
Hmm.
right, let's go, and then everything that follows is riding the high, even if it
Hmm.
is a straight ahead version of Susie or what do we? Yeah, Susie is a
Hmm.
perfect example. And then they encore with Sleeping Monkey because they've had a great time. Plus, it's Europe '97. These people are touring on the train, so
Right.
that's pretty great
Home on
too.
the train. Uh, the idea of Europe is also interesting to me in the sense that like you think about the summer '96 tour, which Meg you were on a lot of that, if not the entirety of it. Um, they Rob Mitchum, friend of the pod, was writing about summer '96 last year and wrote about how in a lot of parts of Europe they were getting hissed, and that being hissed was not a good thing in any sort of way. And they were being like catcalled and whistled in France, which is actually a sign that they don't like you. Um, and throughout that tour, they're opening for Santana in these giant venues, and then playing a couple one-off gigs in Amsterdam and in London. And I almost wonder if they looked at it and were like, along with Elektra, like, well, we can sell out a 3,500 person room over here, 1,200 person room over here in a way that we simply can't. We can't play that anymore in the United States. But at the same time, we can kind of go over here and nobody's really paying attention to us. And
Yeah,
you're talking 1997 technology. Most people weren't getting these tapes for months after these shows were happening. It'd be a very different story if Fish was playing Europe right now, and we were all following every single move that they were making. So there's this weird combination of like, we're this really big band that just played an 80,000 person festival 6 months earlier, but we fly 5 hours and nobody cares about who we are. And yet we know consciously we need to go through some sort of a evolution. This is the perfect place to do it because you can do it with the eyes who are on you are eyes who either are slightly indifferent and have just heard you and they're going out for a concert, or they are people who have followed you from America and are like super, super dedicated and are going to listen and take the time to try to understand where you're going.
the
That's
faithful.
got to be such a freeing place.
Yeah, and I think like when they went in '96, it was their first time and they took it more of like, yeah, this is a chance to blow off steam and get away from the pressures. But it seems like in 1997, they went there with a purpose to consciously
Yeah.
change their style. And I think that shows their maturity as well as a band and shows their ability, like you were saying, Jonathan, to use what the record label was willing to pay for and actually like develop a new style. And I think that is just awesome and just shows who they are and that they were able to take that moment and really push. I mean, especially looking at the summer '97 Europe tour. And maybe we should talk about some of those in the summer, but like these Amsterdam shows are so incredible. They're so incredible.
Yeah, I'll be pedantic and say they did go over in, was it 92, Brian? Is it the
Oh,
Yeah,
did
Violent
they?
summer
Femmes and
'92.
yeah,
They
yeah.
went over,
Oh,
but it
that's
was
right.
I
Yeah.
But
think
it
I
was
think it was opening as well for the Violent
yeah,
Femmes.
it was a small, it was much
Wow.
smaller than the Santana run,
Yeah.
and yeah, I mean, I think the Santana tour was a little bit of it was camp. You know, they were hanging out with Santana, sitting in with Santana, hanging out with his band, and played a few shows on the side. And I mean, I don't have to tell you, right? Because you were there. Damn it, um, I was home with a baby, but they. but
Sorry.
but this was this was their tour, this right here,
Yeah.
and then the next
Yeah.
one, this was
Yeah.
so it was a little bit different. The stakes were maybe higher, but the opportunities were greater too. So
I
and I
also
think they
wonder,
really
like,
grabbed it.
just personally, like, there's something about like a coming of age experience of traveling around Europe, and Trey and Fish busked around Europe in the '80s. They never played any formal shows, but like Harry Hood came from a beach in, I think, Italy after a near death experience that Trey had, and he came back and just started playing the DAG chords over and over again and built it up. And who knows who on that beach heard the first take of the Harry Hood jam, something that like we all chase. They
Nobody
wrote
that
you
cared.
Yeah.
nobody that cared. They wrote "You Enjoy Myself" over there. I mean, you've got to imagine 12 years later, they're now at a point where, I mean, this is what they do. Nobody has side gigs. They are musicians, and this is their life's goal and their life's work at this point. And they've returned to Europe now to play their own tour. Um, I want to put out two quick stats that I find really, really interesting based on this specific show. One is Susie Greenberg is played, which seems, oh yeah, Susie Greenberg late in the second set. Of course, little dose of energy. If you look at the Fishnet stats and you go back through 1996, pretty much every version is played within like a 4 or 5 show rotation. It's played about 18 times. I don't have the exact count, but like, it's close to 20 times played in 1996. They play it here, 217, 3 shows since the last performance on New Year's Eve. They play it again on 223, and then again on 318, and then they will not play it again for 48 shows, 1129 97.
Hmm.
After that, 42 shows, 86 98, 29 shows, 1124 98, 26 shows, 725 99, and then another 26 shows, 10 8 99, and then it starts to come back into the rotation. Susie is one of the songs that is on kind of the chopping block at the end of this tour, where they talk about this in the Fish book. The band at the end of this tour was like, we need to just cut a bunch of songs and incorporate a ton of new songs into the set list. Tweezer after this tour would not be played again until the Gorge. It's interesting to hear Susie in the context of this set that has so much like transgressive music and so much change happening in it, and then you hear this old staple that will almost all but disappear after this for the coming 10 or 11 months.
And they play the shit out of it, so it's not like
Right.
Really do.
they hate the song or
Right.
whatever, but it is
Yeah.
stylistically rigid
Yeah.
as compared to a lot of the material they're bringing in. So something's got to give, I guess.
It's
plus
funny that
I-
you say that too, because that song, I saw the most Fish I've ever seen in 1996, and I still to this day I'm like, I don't need to hear Susie anymore. And maybe it's because I heard it so much. I've never really knew that before.
It's like the people who were seeing the next couple of years were saying, came away saying, I don't need to see character zero.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, it's interesting because Susie's one of those songs that would benefit ultimately from this reinvention. You think about like the Darien Lakes version from 2000, like that is, they somehow unlocked that, oh wow, Susie Greenberg leads to this like crazy funk jam that we could play
Yeah.
for 15, 16 minutes and just have the greatest time on. The other thing I was looking at was Sleeping Monkey Rocky Top, because when I was listening to this, I was like, man, this really sounds like a 97 encore. So they played it this night. They would not play Sleeping Monkey again until 8/13/97. They then played it on 12/6/97, which comes towards the end of the second set, goes into Tweezer Reprise. They played on 12/30/97, and then they returned to, at the end of the second set, on 4298, Twist, Into Sleeping Monkey, Into Rocky Top. These two songs that, like, to me, and maybe it's just how much I've listened to 4298 and 12697, these songs just sound paired together like a 97 encore, and
I mean,
it's way rarer than I remembered.
they had played them together for, about a dozen times prior to this incident. Those two songs quite often went together, going all the way back to, let's see, off the top of my screen, 3/19/92. So,
Yeah.
I mean, they'd done that a lot, and so they go together in my brain as well,
It's really fun.
almost as much as Sleeping Monkey Tweezer Reprise.
That's the best.
It's a great pairing.
Yeah.
It's a great pairing. Anything else you want to say about this show specifically before we move into the big takeaways?
I think just listening to that whole Down with Disease, Carini taste reprise is pretty awesome. It's a pretty good chunk of music that just is pretty interesting to listen to as like one kind of piece of music.
It's fluid.
Mm-hmm.
I think fluid is a great word. I don't think I can improve on that comment. I think it is. It's just a great slab of music, and you should take it all together. You should not piecemeal the Carini. You need to listen to it in the proper context.
Yeah, I think the only thing I would add is, I've listened through the fall 90 or the winter 97 tour, and there are some great moments. 226 is a fantastic show if you haven't listened to that. It's filled with rarities. It's really kind of bizarre to listen to. 3-1 obviously was released as Slip, Stitch, and Pass. There are great moments, but it's clear that when they leave that winter tour, they go to, I think, Bearsville at that point in time, and start to just jam. And then they emerge back with all these new songs and play the summer tour, which has some higher highs. The thing that fascinates me about this set is that it's so effortless, and that fluidity that you're talking about, Maggie, like, is just what they are going to achieve on summer tour. You think about like the Disease and the Gin from The Great Went. What they're going to achieve on fall tour in its best moments are these effortless moments where, like, ultimately the band is almost not even trying, and they end up just like finding themselves in a segment of music, of songs that maybe shouldn't go together but work together perfectly, and that's like the brilliance 97. And it happens here almost out of surprise, and then they're going to go back to just like trying really, really hard for the next 2 weeks to find this magic again. And that kind of experience is going to lead them to just working really hard, but also realizing that they need to stop working so hard, which is kind of the goal, or like the theme of 97 is they stop trying so hard and the magic happens. And that's really interesting to me.
Yeah, isn't that what saves The Great Went in their minds? At least I didn't hate that first set, but they were.
That's such an interesting moment. Yeah.
Right? Isn't that the thing? Like, they were like,
Yeah.
God damn, I was so frustrated, and we had to just stop analyzing and just relax.
Play.
And then
Mm-hmm.
and then it definitely got better after that set. But
Yeah. So I want to ask you guys, we've talked a bit about this, but I want to ask you all for some answers on the record, okay, about this show. Megan, what jams or jam from this show do you think most impacted the band as they moved into this new sound and era of 1997?
I mean, I think it has to be the Carini. I mean, it's just too unique, too different, too patient. I think that's really the takeaway. I think they were really trying to slow down consciously. And this Carini, you can even hear them. It's such a slowly played intro, and you can hear them kind of working it out. I mean, it's the first time they played it, but you can also just hear the patience in the jam in a way that I think is new, and they're just giving themselves time. So to me, that really, I think, impacts where they're going.
It's boring podcast, no debate here. I think the Carini is really the thing. I mean, they come out with the new song. Soul Shakedown Party isn't the song that changes the band in this show. It's a new song too, but it's the Carini. They're showcase the new thing, and they find all kinds of different pockets they can dive into with it, and you know, it's unlocking doors. And I think it's a big deal for them. It's a big deal for us.
So I agree with you both, but for the purposes of podcasting and debate, I'm going to offer just another idea, because I think the show actually has two of these moments.
You're not wrong.
The gin, the gin, and I think just specifically what I was talking about, that idea of like Trey is, it's almost like, you know, Bathtub Gin is one of those Fish songs that they feels like they can play in their sleep, and if they want to, they just like go into double time. Trey just like goes an octave up, and they just start like shredding, return to the theme, and everyone's like, oh my God, that was the greatest moment of my entire life, you know. And he's like, fuck it, we're not going to do that right now. And he's just starting to like play these weird distorted chords, and he's just pushing against the theme of the song. And it's when Fish puts that disco beat in that it's like, whether they know it or not, that is the sound going forward. And I don't know how much that, you know, at this point, if they're walking off stage being like, let's try that again in a different song, and they play it in Carini, or if it was just like a moment that like 1,000 other just passed them by and they were turned to later. Who knows? But that, to me, when I hear it, I'm like, man, that is an early side of 1997.
That is always something I wonder about. Like,
Mm-hmm.
you know, I know they stopped analyzing, right? But I always wonder,
Mm-hmm.
like, did that moment mean as much to them as it did to me?
I think some of them they do, right?
Yeah.
I feel
think
like,
they do too, yeah.
you hear about like them. I mean, Trey talked about like the Ruby Waves from Alpine Valley, right? I mean, I think
Right.
there's jams that definitely they know. But I
They
think
took
there's
a
a couple
bow at
other,
Providence, so I'll take
yeah,
that one.
to the belly. I think there's a couple jams on this tour, actually, in this first early shows, like The Hood from Shepherd's Bush on 213. That's like a really slow build. There's no like rush to peak. There's a jam after Punch You in the Eye that night. That's really cool. There's also 2001 and Hood again from 218. There's a couple of jams in these shows that are slower, and you can hear them trying stuff out. It's pretty cool. So I think it's worth listening to some of these shows, especially if you're like really interested in 1997. And this is kind of the birth, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I've always, it's why I love Fall 96, especially in November, is you hear post Remain in Light, a
Mhm.
band that has kind of found a sound. And while it's rougher around the edges, it's not as sleek as you get in 97. You hear moments throughout. And I think you're absolutely right. It's then you fuse this, nobody is paying attention to us, and we were playing in tiny rooms again for the first time in 5 years. We're going to play whatever we want, that you get out of a lot of those jams that you listed. It's pocketed moments. That's really interesting. So next question for you all. This show, to me, I think if I've built a fair argument around this, we'll let our dear listeners answer this as well. And anyone who's listening right now, please feel free to throw answers in the comments here to these questions. We would love to shout them out. This show feels like a line in the sand moment to me. And that disease, Carini, taste, disease specifically feels like a line in the sand. Can you name any other shows through Fish history that to you feel like a line in the sand?
Marat, 93.
It's a good one. That's a really good one.
Speaking of good bathtub gins.
Yeah, that feels like one.
Yeah. In fact, I'd almost venture to say that the first show of '93 with when they bring
Grand
the piano,
Mm.
long-time HFPod listeners know that it has been talked about a lot on this show, and there's with good reason, because it really changed Page's approach to playing, which changed everything.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that show. Yeah, that show definitely feels like when they walked off stage after that gin
Mhm.
in Marat, like we were just able to do something that we've been trying to do, but we haven't done like that. And how do we do that again? And how do we do it tomorrow? What about you, Meg? You got any thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not as good as thinking about the big kind of historical context as you both are, but it was interesting when I was thinking about that they were trying to do something new. They were debuting a lot of songs, especially in the summer part of this tour. They're experimenting with new rig setups. I think Mike had a new bass in this European tour. Trey's adding the percussion to his setup. It kind of reminds me of the beginning of 4.0, a time when they came out, they had a lot of new music. They're trying all these different sounds and they're really trying different kind of jamming. Now we know it's really influenced from the Sci-Fi Soldier work they're going to do, which we're going to talk about next week. But it's, to me, a little bit interesting to think about just that the beginning of 4.0 really sounded like something new to me.
I think that's a really good point. I think like you listen to I remember watching the webcast from Arkansas and thinking, especially during the simple, like these are new sounds that we have not heard before. And this is a really interesting approach that I'm curious to hear where the band goes with this. And it feels very risky, but then also seeing Coretta's Lights and thinking to myself, oh my God, like from an overall just like presentation standpoint, like the entire band is presenting some new idea to us that would ultimately flourish over the next 2 months. Yeah, I'm thinking 3.0 as well. The Fuck Your Face show really reminds me in a lot of cases like this Amsterdam show where I was in the venue at the time and I remember just thinking to myself and jumping online afterwards and everyone had the exact same reaction of like, we haven't heard them do that in a long, long time. Something is happening that is very, very different from what we've heard before. And how do they go back to that like pre Fuck Your Face type of moment? And while it took them time over the coming months and even over the coming year to really play that type of show consistently, it was clear that like the lessons of that show were felt the next night in the light, the following night in the sand, 4 months later in the Tweezer, in the Carini. As they would play through that summer 2013 tour, there were moments that would bubble up. The Tweezer from Tahoe, all that sort of stuff.
I think there's a whole episode in here because, one could argue that Fare Thee Well might be one of those lines. One could argue 42193, and it's funny that and I don't think insignificant that that's the third 1993 point that I've selected. But that's of course the show where they really finally cracked Split Open and Melt, and they even used that for Demand on Hoist.
Bomb Factory.
Yeah,
definitely.
That second set, that Tweezer, there's nothing like that prior to that second set.
Right. So, yeah, I mean, I think we should just pencil it in, Brian. I think we'll have to do a whole episode on these things.
This is a good.
That would be cool.
off tour topic as well. We need plenty of these for the off touring months. I'm going to shout out listener Brett Wooden, who threw out 8/22/15, which I totally agree with. That you get a 3-set show. First set's great afternoon festival fish, but second set you've got this absolutely amazing 46 Days, Tweezer into that incredible Caspian. Third set, Blaze On, Light, Cities. Fourth set, the Drive-In Jam, which felt like such a peak moment and one of the greatest Fish experiences I've ever had.
That's a good call.
A couple more questions for you guys. So they would return to Amsterdam just under 5 months later, play 2 shows, 2 very, very good shows, one of which opens up with a 20-minute Ghost, has an incredible second set. Another one has an amazing 30-minute Stash in it, some of the most beautiful, beautiful jamming possible. How do these shows compare to those? How does this show compare to those in your thoughts?
I kind of feel like the first set sounds like 1996. And then the second set sounds more like those shows. To me, it's kind of like the first set's like belongs the other side, and the second set belongs like closer. It's so cool that they decided to release them all together as the box set because the Paradiso is obviously like a special place for them. I mean, they obviously play. There are just some venues that Fish lights up, and I think this is obviously one of them. And I think that like thinking of how they were playing when they came back in July, it's just after spending all that time writing Story of the Ghost and having all these new songs, and it's just coming in. I mean, they are absolutely on fire. I mean, that second set on night 2 is 4 songs. I mean, it's like insane. Stash, Llama, Wormtown Jam, Waiting in the Velvet Sea. So maybe even only 3 songs if you don't include the jam. I mean, it's bananas. They're so patient and so locked in these shows. And I love listening to them.
Yeah, I got to say, I tend to agree here. I don't even know what I'm doing here. Megan's got all this covered.
She does. She really has this
Please.
covered.
This is her zone.
I learned from you.
The band is it's the same band in the second tour as it is in the second set, just with more songs, you know. And there's so many great shows in that tour. The Lille show, the Copenhagen, you know, such great music that God, I'm kind of speechless about it. It's really a big jump. I prefer the winter summer 97 to the fall stuff myself. I'm not a huge fall 97 guy. I think the experimentation is more free flowing. There's certainly a lot of fire in the fall. I'm not here to knock those shows. I'm into some of the weird shit. So, so yeah, I think they just keep building. Fish is still building on itself a lot at this time. So that's what you got.
Yeah, I think I love the breakdown of like set 1 of this show is 96 Fish. Set 2 is these first shows is the first hint at the summer. I think that the one thing I'll add is like this show opens up with a Soul Shakedown Party, which will be played once more in the winter and then will not return until 2.0, 2/28/03. But that sound, that groove, seemed to really influence the rest of 1997, 98, and even into 99 and 2000. But then 7/1/97 opens up with a 20-minute Ghost. And like, it's almost like they walk on stage on 7/1/97 and are like, okay, we're back. We were in this room 6 months ago, 5 months ago, and we're back with some really new sounds. And we're going to
I love this Ghost.
Right away. It's so good.
Let me show you my new shit.
Yeah, exactly.
All right, last question for you all, because we've already recommended a jam. I think we're going with the Carini and the Gin as the jams that we're recommending. Super fun question for you all. What did Fish do during the day of 2/17/97 in Amsterdam?
Sleep. Van Gogh Museum. That's my part.
I think they probably handled it a lot different than when they were there in 1996, which I would also like to say, I think if I had gone back for this 1997 tour, I would have handled it a lot different too. So I have to give them a lot of credit for going in with some discipline. But there is a really great story in the Fish book about how they partied the night before the Mark Tall show in Hamburg, which is pretty hilarious. And they were drinking some like Dr. Joe's knockout punch, and seems like they were super raging before that show. And that show ended up being incredible. But I don't know. So maybe they were raging the night before, but I think they were definitely sleeping during the day. I think you're right. I think they were playing it really, really, really smart, really tight this time.
Yeah, the first time you go to Amsterdam, you go crazy. You see the first coffee shop, and you're like, I'm going there.
Like,
you know nothing about it, and you just go in and you walk out, and you're like, wow, there are people that work in this city? Like, how is this city still standing? The second time you go back, you realize, like, you know what's like the best part about Amsterdam? Like, the actual coffee shops, like the coffee shops, Vondel Park, which probably isn't that nice in February, but also to Jonathan's point, the Van Gogh Museum. It's absolutely fucking stunning. It's an incredible place to go, and you realize how much creativity there is in the city of Amsterdam. I've got to imagine that was on the itinerary, and then they went there and said, let's apply that in a musical term. And that's what they did.
They probably played some chess too. There's a lot of outdoor chess in Amsterdam. And I know Fishman played so much chess on 1996 tour. So maybe they were playing some chess outdoors.
I would
a little cold in February.
A little chilly by the canals, but the worms are there to keep you warm.
The back of the worm.
Back of the worm. Well, this was a fantastic deep dive back into 21797. I want to thank you guys. We will be back next Wednesday, February 9th at 4:30 p.m. Eastern, which is also 2:30 p.m. Mountain Standard Time. And if you were here at the start of this episode, you know that we walked you all the way back to Alaska. Quick programming note. This came down the pike just before we went live. So we will be talking to Chris Pandolfi of the infamous String Dusters. We'll be revisiting Sci-Fi Soldiers in the very near future because we want to talk as it's been a couple of months since Sci-Fi Soldiers. But Chris Pandolfi is going to be available to talk through some Fish, some infamous String Dusters tour, and talk through his third season of Inside the Musician's Brain on Osiris Media. So very, very excited about that.
So exciting.
I can't wait. He's an awesome dude. If you haven't seen the infamous String Dusters, they are an incredible live band. And it's going to be really cool to talk with him about Fish and about just music in general. We will definitely return to Sci-Fi Soldiers, though, because I have thoughts, John has thoughts, Megan has thoughts, and we need to dive back into what that means as we move into the next phase of Fish 4.0, if you will.
Gamehenge 4.0.
Gamehenge 4.0. 2,000 years in the future. Before we go, though, I want to remind you all, well, actually, Megan will remind you all of our sponsor.
Yeah, I want to tell you about our good friends at Sunset Lake CBD. I ordered some products last night. I ordered some gummies. I have a friend who's been having some trouble sleeping, so I thought this would be a nice gift for her. Let me just tell you, they were shipped out this morning. I ordered them last night. They're already en route. I've heard that they get their products out super fast, and that's great. And that's because they're a farmer-owned business, and they ship their products directly from their farm to your door. So for years, Sunset Lake was a Vermont dairy farm, and they were producing milk for Ben & Jerry's ice cream. And in 2018, they diversified, started growing hemp for CBD. And they've got a product for everyone. We know Brian likes their pre-rolls. I'm eager to try those. They've got hemp cigars, hemp flowers, as well as tinctures, gummies, and CBD coffee, which sounds super cool. It's crafted to help stress, aches, and pains. And they save you a lot of money by shipping high-quality CBD products directly from their farm to your door. So you can go to sunsetlakecbd.com and you can use the promo code HFPod. You get 20% off your purchase. So that's sunsetlakecbd.com and the promo code is HFPod.
Beautiful. I can't wait for those to arrive and you to know the benefits of Sunset Lake. I'm excited. Thank you guys. This was a ton of fun. And I will see you, both of you, as well as everyone out there listening, next week, 4:30 p.m. Eastern. Take care until then. Bye-bye.
Thanks all.